Are you controlling your husband, or do you think that you're maybe mothering him? Well, that is a question that we received, and we would love to answer that. Stay tuned.
Don't want to miss it. You're listening to Marriage Mania, where we are audacious, sagacious, and tenacious for the Lord to uphold godly marriages and to raise fervent children who are countercultural and stand for biblical truth.
Welcome back. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Michael.
And today we received another question from our wonderful listeners. And today's question is, how as a wife can I control my husband less and stop mothering him? Well, that is a great question, and we want to answer that question today. But before we get started, please subscribe here. It helps us to get the message out. We want to reach as many families as possible for Jesus Christ. It is our heart, and we are just thrilled in the opportunity that we have to be able to share. And we also have Bible studies to check out at marriagemaniaministry.com. We have the covering, the role of a biblical husband, and the helper, the role of a biblical wife. These two Bible studies are impactful to your marriage because we tackle the areas of the biblical roles and what God calls us to do as husbands and wives. We want to encourage marriages. And so check those out at marriagemaniaministry.com. If you've dealt with conflict, which we probably all have in our communication, well, this book is for you. It's called The Conflict Manual. This book tackles communication styles and the biblical approach to communication, how we can better enhance our communication with our spouse so that we can understand each other. Or maybe we don't understand our styles and how we communicate and we get frustrated. And so this book really covers a lot of the styles and the different techniques. So check that out at marriagemaniaministry.com. Okay, so today we want to talk about this question that came through, and we are so thankful for our listeners. We're so thankful for all those who follow us on Instagram and Facebook and here on YouTube and on all our different podcast platforms. We're thrilled to have you. And this question came through, and so we want to answer it today. And we're doing a series of answering marriage questions. So if you want to get your marriage question, wait till the end and I'll tell you how you can submit it. So the question today is, as a wife, how can I be less controlling with my husband and not mother him? That is a great question. It goes back to Genesis 3:16, where the wife wants to rule over her husband and control him, but God says that Adam will be the head, he will be the husband, and he will be the leader. And so today we're going to try to talk about this. So how, as a wife, our wonderful listener wants to know, how can she stop controlling her husband and stop mothering him, to the point where it's, maybe she's treating him like a child, or maybe she's talking to him like she would discipline her children and just controlling everything. It's a very hard thing for a woman because we want things to go the way we want them to go. And if we don't get the results right away, we just tend to take over. It's a natural thing. We just say, okay, I need you to do these things. And if you don't do them, it's like, okay, I'll just take care of it. You just jump right in rather than, okay, I'm just going to try to be patient. I'm going to try. But Michael, I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, this is a dangerous question.
It kind of is.
I don't want to get myself in trouble. But I think to me, I just have I have the helper like ringing in my head this whole time. God created wives to be the helper, to help their husbands.
Mhm.
And, I think sometimes, women are not trying to be controlling necessarily. Unless you just have a
Sometimes we
controlling
are.
personality. There's
Yeah.
some that have a more controlling personality, but I think for the most part, most are good natured and are just trying to be helpful, and so they are being the helper. Now, some women I think have a little extra helper in them and they can start to get controlling, and, guys, their mindsets are a little different. And, my men's world tends to be full of power structures. And so they think in that kind of realm. They have a different worldview. Women don't don't tend to think that way psychologically, and don't understand when men can get offended that they're being controlled, because that's how you kind of determine the pecking order out there in the man's world, is who gets to control whom. And we don't want to be controlled. We don't necessarily want to control our wives, and we don't want to be controlled by our wives. We don't want to be controlled by our children. And sometimes when we feel like we're kind of being helped a little bit too much, it feels to a guy that that's controlling. You're kind of like, I feel like a puppet on a string. I feel like you're kind of controlling my every move, when in fact she, in her mindset, is like, I'm just helping. I'm just trying to help you keep track of all the 5 billion things that we have to keep track of. And
Mm-hmm.
wives tend to be very good at that and keeping track of everything. And so they can be helpful in that regard. But sometimes they can be even more helpful, quote unquote, in that way, and just start helping guys in areas like, I don't need help in that. I'm perfectly capable. I'm trying to show you that I am capable of doing things, and that, I'm a get her done kind of person. And with you helping me all the time, I kind of feel like I'm a child that needs help with every little thing. And so it can kind of overstep a boundary. And so it's one of those things where it's, I think, on a spectrum and on a scale that we have to kind of gauge, and with individual psychologies and mindsets and opinions, and just kind of gauging your husband on how much help he's willing to receive. And if we go a little bit too far, if he's starting to get some pushback because he's starting to feel like maybe I'm being mothered or controlled a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I need to step that back a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. So we just have to be in tune with people and be okay with that. It's like, well, I can help him if I want, and this is just his problem if he's feeling controlled.
Yeah,
It's
we
like
don't want to
we
do
don't want
that.
to, yeah, because we got to understand that
Mm-hmm.
we think differently, and just individuals think differently, and we want to be in tune with how somebody thinks and feels, and be empathetic and understanding of someone, and certainly be willing to help, but not
Mm-hmm.
overstep that line into the area of being controlling.
Well, I also think this could be from a wife that maybe she feels that she's asked the same question or has made requests of her husband. And maybe there's a point in their marriage where she's like, he's just not going to do it. So I'll just take care of it. And I think maybe that's kind of where it stems. And then it becomes more of a stressor and a frustration. And so, how do you get yourself out of that? Because you've gone years doing this, and now you're like, okay, now you have to learn to step back because he's being treated as he's a child, another child. And so I think that's probably maybe the root of that question, is maybe this person is frustrated because they've been asking their husband to do something, and now it's full blown, I'm going to control everything. So now you're the main leader now in the home because you're controlling everything.
Right, and that's where I guess things can get into nagging. It's like, because nagging is a very controlling behavior. Let me just pester you until it happens, instead of persuade you. Now I'm going to pester you. And
Mhm.
so the person's doing it not because they're persuaded, but because just to get you off their back, and that's a controlling type of behavior, just as it would be to just like yell at somebody to make them do it. It's both of them are very controlling, and both, the Bible tells us not to do that. We usually use soft words and not harsh words, according to Proverbs 15,
Mhm.
1. And we are not to nag, where the Bible says that over and over again. We are to persuade and not pester. And so, and so that, and guys can nag and pester as well. But, again, I think that the reason a lot of that's directed towards wives is because they have that helper in them and they want
Mm.
to help. And that's just a natural aspect of things, is let me help you.
Mhm.
But we can overhelp our children as well,
Mhm.
because the whole goal of parenting is to assist our children into doing more and more for themselves without us asking, and without us guiding their every move. And we don't want to do that with our husbands as well, because then our husbands can also get into the habit of just depending on our wives to
Mhm.
remind them of absolutely everything. And that can get tiring as well. And so we need to give each other a sense of autonomy, that okay, he can take care of it, he'll get around to it when he can, and I don't have to guide his every move. That's starting to just kind of get more controlling, we can control our kids that way. We can control our spouse that way. And what the goal of parenting and the goal of being a spouse is to really foster an environment where people feel free and able to do things on their own and equipped to do things on their own. And, I know as a single guy, I did things on my own for a while until I got married, and everything got along just fine. There was no one else to do it but me. There was no one else to
And you did it. Yeah.
remind me but me. And it caused me to kind of keep notes, put things on calendars, and keep track of it myself. And, we can create an environment where the husband's just overly dependent on the wife to keep track of everything. And that can get a little resentful, because you hear wives oftentimes saying, man, why is it all on me to like keep track of birthdays and keep track of this and what kids are going there? Because you've taken that on and you haven't given any leeway to your husband to keep track of some of this themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And yes, the helper keeps coming up, the helper, the role of a biblical wife, because, that is all about learning what the intention of your heart is and how you can actually submit in a godly way. So like surrendering a lot of these things, and it's not going to be perfect, but it is a step into that direction. So that is definitely something we would recommend to study and check out. So this was great that we were able to talk about that, because we all need to talk about this. These are things that people probably don't really discuss. And so I'm thankful we had the opportunity. And I invite the listeners, whoever submitted this question, I invite you to give us your feedback or share your thoughts and what you think as well. Or anybody here, you can put that in the comments. And if you have a question that you want to submit, a marriage question, a family question, please just put in the comment question, and we will reach out to you, and we can get you the form so that you can submit that. And we will answer these questions here on our podcast. So we are so thankful that we were able to answer that. Hopefully that gets your heart stirred and begin to look at what God can do in your marriage as you begin to submit and surrender those controlling tendencies in the marriage. And so stay tuned as we continue answering questions for those that submit them. And we are so thankful to be able to answer them. If you like this podcast, please give us a thumbs up and share it with a friend. That would be amazing. Subscribe. And we are here every Tuesday where we share a new podcast. So give us a thumbs up. And until next time,
God bless.